The stars were calm in the endless black sky, but inside the transport ship, there was no calm. Lights flickered, alarms screamed, and the floor shook as if the ship was caught in the hands of a giant. Ethan Cole, a human engineer with strong arms and sharp eyes, ran through the narrow corridors. The smell of burning wires filled the air, and small sparks fell from the ceiling like deadly rain. His hands were black with grease, but his mind was focused if the engines failed completely. They were all dead. Beside him moved Zira, a tall and beautiful alien woman with smooth silver skin and bright golden eyes. She was from the warrior race called NeonAlienz, and every step she took was fast and silent like a hunter. Her long hair floated behind her as she carried a strange spear-shaped weapon. She did not speak much, but Ethan could feel her eyes on him, studying him, judging him. They were not friends, just passengers on the same doomed ship, but fate was about to change that. "Engine core is overloading," Ethan shouted over the noise. Zira's voice was calm, even in chaos. "Then we must leave." Another explosion ripped through the ship, throwing them against the wall. Red emergency lights flashed, and the floor tilted under their feet. Somewhere far away, a deep metallic groan echoed, the sound of the ship breaking apart. They ran toward the escape pods, passing crew members who were shouting orders and warnings. The air grew hot, almost burning, as the engine room tore itself apart. When they reached the escape bay, only 2 pods remained, both shaking from the turbulence. Ethan opened one and motioned for Zira to get inside. But she hesitated. Her golden eyes looked at him sharply. "I do not take orders from humans," she said. Ethan didn't have time to argue. "Then get in, or we both die." She stepped inside with a glare, and Ethan climbed in after her. The hatch slammed shut, and a mechanical voice counted down. 3, 2, 1. The pod launched into the void with a violent jolt. Ethan was pressed against his seat as the pod spun away from the dying ship. Through the small window, they saw the transport break in half, flames bursting into space. Pieces of metal floated past, glowing red from heat. Ethan thought they were heading toward the assigned safe zone. But then something changed. The pod began to shake harder, alarms screaming again. "We're caught in a gravity pull," Ethan shouted, checking the controls. Zira's hand gripped the side tightly. "That is not a star," she said slowly. "It is a planet." The pod was being dragged toward a dark green world covered in swirling clouds. It was not on any of their maps. They crashed through the atmosphere, fire streaking across the glass. Ethan fought the controls, trying to slow them down. The ground rushed up at terrifying speed, thick jungle, glowing plants, rivers like silver snakes. With a deafening crash, they slammed into the earth. The pod slid across the jungle floor, tearing through trees before stopping. Ethan's head spun, his chest hurt, and he felt warm blood on his forehead. Zira unbuckled herself quickly, limping slightly as she stood. Her spear was already in her hands, her eyes scanning the shadows. The jungle was alive with strange sounds, deep calls, high screeches and rustling leaves. Soft glowing spores floated in the air, and some plants moved as if they could breathe. Ethan stepped out of the pod, feeling the damp soil under his boots. "This place is wrong," he muttered. Zira turned to him sharply. "No, this place is alive. And it is watching us." He froze, listening. Somewhere in the distance, branches snapped under heavy weight. A low growl rolled through the air like thunder. Ethan's heart pounded. "Please tell me that's the wind." Zira shook her head slowly, her golden eyes fixed on the darkness between the trees. "That is not the wind," she whispered. "That is a hunter." The growl came again, louder, closer. Ethan looked around for anything he could use, a piece of metal, a tool, anything. The shadows moved, and he saw them, 2 points of light, glowing yellow, like eyes. The sound of breathing came next, deep and heavy. Whatever it was big. And it was right in front of them. Ethan took a step back, his foot snapping a dry branch. The eyes moved fast, rushing toward them. Zera's spear lit up with blue energy. Leaves flew in all directions as the creature lunged from the dark. Its roar shook the air, a sound that promised only death. And then everything went black. Ethan opened his eyes slowly, his head pounding like drums in the distance. For a moment, he thought he was still in space. But the thick, damp air and the smell of soil told him otherwise. Above him, the canopy of alien trees swayed gently, glowing vines hanging down like strange snakes. Beside him, Zera stood tall, her golden eyes sharp, her spear pointed toward the shadows. What happened? Ethan asked, his voice rough. The creature came close, Zera said softly, but it did not attack. It is hunting us. Testing us. Her tone was calm, but Ethan could see tension in her body. The jungle was alive with sounds, deep croaks, insect hums, and far-off screeches. Every noise seemed to come from something dangerous. Ethan reached for his side and felt the small toolkit still clipped to his belt. It was the only useful thing he had left after the crash. They began to move away from the broken escape pod. Ethan scanned the ground for broken parts he could use. Zera walked ahead, silent and careful, her steps light despite her injured leg. The plants seemed to follow their movement, leaves turning toward them like curious eyes. Some vines twitched as if they could reach out and grab them. Suddenly, Zera stopped and knelt, pointing at the ground. Ethan saw deep claw marks carved into the wet soil. Each mark was as long as his arm, and there were 3 of them side by side. Tell me that's from a tree, Ethan said weakly. Zera shook her head. It is the hunter. I have seen marks like this before. On war worlds, Ethan frowned. War worlds? Her eyes narrowed. Planets where creatures exist only to kill and to feed. The jungle grew darker as they walked. Tall plants blocked the sunlight, and the air became heavy and damp. A strange mist clung to the ground, swirling around their boots. Ethan felt the hair on his arms stand up. Something was watching. Every few minutes, he caught movement in the corner of his eye. Branches bending, shadows shifting, but when he turned, nothing was there. They reached a clearing with a pool of water glowing faintly blue. Zera knelt to drink, but Ethan stopped her. Don't, he said, pointing at the strange fish-like shapes darting under the surface. The fish had too many teeth, sharp and jagged, and their eyes followed him hungrily. Zera straightened. Good. You are learning to see danger. They didn't stay long. Ethan began searching for higher ground, hoping to get a better view of the area. But as they moved, the jungle went unnaturally quiet. No insects, no birds, no wind, only silence. Zera's grip on her spear tightened. It is here, she whispered. The first sound was a low rumble, deep and steady like a drumbeat. Then came the vibration in the ground, small at first, then stronger. Leaves trembled, vines shook, and the soil cracked under the weight of something approaching. Ethan's heart raced. We need to move. But Zera didn't move. Her golden eyes fixed on the dark path ahead. The trees parted slowly, as if making way for the thing that ruled this jungle. Out stepped a creature so massive it made Ethan forget to breathe. Its skin was dark gray, rough like stone, with patches of glowing scars. Its head was long and narrow, lined with rows of teeth sharper than knives. 4 glowing yellow eyes scanned the clearing. It let out a sound between a growl and a hiss, the air vibrating with its power. Ethan grabbed Zera's arm. Run! They bolted through the jungle, vines whipping at their faces. The creature roared and charged after them, each step shaking the ground. Ethan stumbled over a root, but kept running. Branches broke above them as the beast forced its way through the trees. Zera glanced back, her face calm but her pace faster. It is not chasing us to kill, she shouted. It is chasing us to exhaust us. They burst into another clearing. Ethan spotted a fallen tree leaning against a boulder, creating a small cave-like gap. In there, he yelled. They slid inside just as the beast crashed into the clearing, its roar shaking their bones. The smell of its breath filled the air, hot and foul. It circled the clearing slowly, sniffing the ground. One massive claw scraped the boulder, making the rock groan under the pressure. Ethan held his breath. Zira's eyes never left the beast. Minutes passed like hours until finally, the creature turned and disappeared back into the trees. The jungle sound slowly returned. Ethan let out a shaky breath. That thing is unstoppable, Zira nodded. And now, it knows our scent. They crawled out of hiding. Ethan's legs felt weak, but they kept moving. Night was coming fast, and the glowing plants began to shine brighter. The jungle was more dangerous. In the dark, Zira made that clear. They needed to find shelter before the hunter returned. But just as they began to climb a small hill, a strange sound echoed through the jungle, clicking, rhythmic, almost like a language. Shapes moved in the shadows ahead, low to the ground but fast. Zira raised her spear. Not the hunter. Something else. Ethan swallowed hard. Please tell me they're friendly. The clicking grew louder, and more shapes appeared, surrounding them. Golden eyes and yellow eyes were replaced by dozens of smaller, glowing blue ones. The creatures stepped into the dim light, thin, gray-skinned, armed with bone spears. Ethan froze. Zira whispered in her own tongue, "We are not alone on this world." The gray-skinned creatures stood in a half-circle, their glowing blue eyes fixed on Ethan and Zira. They were thin, their bones sharp under their pale skin, but they moved like trained hunters. Their weapons were crude bone spears, jagged knives, but each one dripped with something dark. The clicking sound they made grew faster, echoing in the jungle like an insect swarm. Zira stepped forward slowly, lowering her spear but keeping her stance ready. She spoke in a low, careful tone, her words carrying the same clicking rhythm. The creatures froze, tilting their heads as if trying to understand her. Ethan glanced between them. "What are you saying?" "I told them we are not here to take their land," Zira replied without turning. "That's good," Ethan muttered, "because I don't think we could take it even if we wanted to." One of the creatures, taller than the rest, stepped forward. Its blue eyes scanned Ethan up and down, pausing on the strange tools at his belt. It spoke in a deep, clicking voice, and Zira listened carefully. "They say the hunter follows us, and it will follow us to them," she translated. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we should leave before." A sudden roar cut through the air. It was the hunter, closer than ever. The tribe's warriors hissed and raised their weapons. Zira's voice sharpened. "We fight with them, or we die with them." Ethan's mind raced. He had nothing but a few tools and his brain. He scanned the clearing and spotted a broken section of their escape pod nearby. An idea sparked in his head. "Cover me," he told Zira. She didn't argue. She spun to face the jungle as the roar grew louder. Ethan dashed to the wreckage, pulling free a small fuel canister and a length of cable. His hands worked fast, stripping wires, connecting them to the pod's emergency battery. The smell of fuel filled the air. The ground shook as the hunter crashed through the trees. Its glowing yellow eyes locked onto the clearing. The gray-skinned warriors screamed their battle cries. Rushing forward, the beast swiped with one massive claw, sending two warriors flying. Zira leapt to the side, thrusting her spear into its leg. Blue sparks exploded where the weapon touched. The hunter roared, snapping at her with its knife-filled jaws. Ethan dragged the canister into position. He twisted the wires together and sparks shot out. The canister hissed, leaking fuel into the dirt. "Zira, get them back," he shouted. She understood instantly, shouting something sharp in the warrior's language. They pulled away just as Ethan touched the wires to the battery again. A blinding flash lit the clearing, then fire erupted. The blast rolled through the air, knocking Ethan backward. The hunter staggered, its skin smoking. But it didn't fall. Instead, it turned its furious gaze on Ethan. "Oh no," Ethan breathed. The beast charged, shaking the ground with each step. Zira sprinted, slamming her spear into its side to slow it down. The warriors threw their bone spears, but most bounced off its stone-like skin. Ethan scrambled back toward the wreckage, looking for anything else he could use. His hand closed around a metal pipe. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The fight raged for minutes that felt like hours. The beast lashed out wildly, trees snapping under its strength. Zira moved with deadly precision, striking at its joints and eyes. Ethan waited, watching for his moment. When the beast lunged for Zira again, he sprinted forward and drove the pipe into its wounded leg. It roared, stumbling for the first time. The warriors swarmed, stabbing again and again. The hunter let out a final, furious roar before turning and retreating into the jungle. The sound of its heavy steps faded into the distance. The clearing fell silent, except for heavy breathing. The warriors looked at Ethan with wide blue eyes. Some whispered to each other, pointing at the blackened ground where the explosion had burned. Zira wiped sweat from her brow, her golden eyes fixed on him. "They see you as dangerous now, but also valuable," she said. Ethan gave a tired smile. "I'll take valuable over dead any day." The tall warrior stepped forward again. It spoke in slow, careful clicks, and Zira translated, "They invite us to their home, but they warn the hunter will return." Ethan nodded. "Then we better make the most of the time we have." They followed the warriors deeper into the jungle. The path wound through twisted trees and glowing pools until they reached a hidden valley. Huts made of bone and plant fibers stood in clusters. Small fires burned in pits, sending sweet-smelling smoke into the air. Children with glowing eyes peeked out from behind the huts, curious but cautious. Inside the largest hut, the warriors showed them something strange, a set of metal plates covered in carvings. The symbols glowed faintly, and Ethan recognized them immediately. "They're maps," he whispered, tracing one with his finger. One of the star patterns looked exactly like their own system. He turned to Zira. "If I can get enough parts, I can build a beacon." Her eyes narrowed. "And draw the hunter to us even faster." Ethan sighed. "We don't have a choice. It will find us no matter what." Before Zira could answer, a scream ripped through the village. A warrior burst into the hut, shouting in panic. Zira translated quickly, "It's here." Ethan grabbed his pipe, his pulse quickening. Through the gap in the hut, he saw two glowing yellow eyes appear in the darkness beyond the fires. The hunter had returned. And this time, it wasn't alone. The night in the jungle was alive with firelight and fear. The villagers shouted in their clicking language, grabbing weapons and pulling children into the safety of huts. Ethan stood at the entrance of the chief's hut, gripping his metal pipe. Zira's spear glowed faintly with blue energy as she stepped beside him. Through the smoke and shifting shadows, two sets of glowing yellow eyes emerged. The hunter was there, but beside it walked a smaller version, its offspring. Both creatures moved slowly, savoring the fear they caused. The ground trembled under their steps. The villagers formed a wide circle. Their spears pointed outward. The clicking language turned into battle cries, sharp and fierce. The chief barked an order, and two warriors ran to the fires, throwing dried plants into the flames. The fire burst higher, sending sparks into the air. The smell was sharp and bitter, making Ethan cough. Zira didn't take her eyes off the beasts. "The smoke will hide our scent." For a short time, Ethan glanced at her. "Not long enough, I'm guessing." She shook her head slowly. "No." The hunter's offspring moved first, rushing forward with surprising speed. It slammed into the outer circle of warriors, sending two flying. Screams cut through the night. The larger hunter roared, a deep sound that shook the ground and made Ethan's legs feel weak. Zira leapt forward, her spear slicing across the smaller beast's flank. Blue sparks lit the air, and the creature howled in pain. Ethan knew he couldn't match Zira's speed. Instead, he ran toward the edge of the village, scanning for anything that could help. His eyes landed on a pile of strange metallic shards, remains of old machines scavenged by the tribe. He dropped to his knees, sifting through them. If he could rig something explosive again, maybe they had a chance. The battle behind him was chaos warriors shouting, beasts roaring, wood cracking. The smaller creature leapt at Zira, but she rolled under it, stabbing upward into its stomach. It screamed, thrashing wildly, knocking huts over with its tail. The larger hunter stepped into the fight, forcing the warriors to scatter. Ethan found what he needed, a cylindrical container with faint energy lines running along its surface. He didn't know exactly what it was, but he had a feeling it could be dangerous. Zira, he shouted, holding it up. She glanced his way, eyes flashing. Keep it ready. The smaller beast turned toward Ethan, blood dripping from its wounds. It lowered its head and charged. Ethan's heart pounded. He held the cylinder tight. Just as the creature lunged, he threw it at its feet and dived out of the way. The moment it hit the ground, the cylinder cracked, releasing a burst of blinding blue light. The smaller beast screeched, stumbling backward, its skin burning from the strange energy. The larger hunter roared and swung its massive head toward Ethan. Zira saw it and sprinted, slamming her spear into its side to draw its attention. The creature turned back to her, its jaws snapping shut inches from her face. The tribe's warriors regrouped, stabbing at its legs, trying to slow it down. Ethan scrambled to his feet, his ears ringing from the blast. The smaller beast staggered toward the jungle, disappearing into the darkness, leaving the larger one alone. The chief shouted something urgent. Zira translated between breaths. They say we must leave now. This fight is not over. Ethan stared at her. Leave? Where? There is a safer place. Deeper in the jungle. In the old ruins, she replied. Ethan's mind raced. Ruins? You mean those stone structures we saw before? Yes, she said firmly, but they are more than stone. They are from a time before the hunter ruled. The tribe moved quickly, grabbing what supplies they could carry. Ethan helped lift a wounded warrior, his body trembling from adrenaline. The path through the jungle was narrow and twisting, lit only by the faint glow of plants in the tribe's torches. Every crack of a branch made Ethan look over his shoulder. Zira stayed near the rear, her spear ready, watching for movement. After what felt like hours, the trees opened to reveal a massive stone structure. The ruins towered over them, carved with alien symbols that pulsed faintly in the dark. Thick vines wrapped around the walls, but the stone itself looked unbroken. Despite its age, the air felt heavy here, charged with something Ethan couldn't explain. This place is older than my people, Zira said quietly. It was built when the jungle was young. Inside, the walls were covered with more glowing carvings. Some showed star maps, others strange beasts, and one looked exactly like the hunter. Ethan traced the lines with his fingers. It's been here for centuries, Zira nodded. It is not just an animal. It is part of this world's story, Ethan frowned. And now we're part of that story too. The tribe began setting up camp inside the ruins. Warriors stood guard at the entrances, their eyes scanning the dark. Ethan sat against the wall, pulling out the few pieces of tech he had left. He whispered to himself, if I can boost the signal, maybe someone will hear us. Zira approached, her shadow stretching across the carvings. Her voice was low. If you do this, it will draw the hunter here. Ethan looked up at her. Then we make a trap big enough to kill it. Zira's golden eyes studied him for a moment before she gave a single nod. Outside, the jungle was quiet, too quiet. In the distance, a deep roar rolled through the trees. The hunter knew where they were, and it was coming. The ruins were silent, except for the low crackle of small fires. The tribe rested in tense groups, their eyes drifting to the dark entrances every few seconds. Above the jungle canopy, two moons shone down, one pale white, the other a deep red. Their light spilled through the cracks in the ancient stone walls, casting strange shadows that danced like ghosts. Ethan sat in the corner, wires spread out in front of him. He worked quickly, attaching scavenged parts to the beacon's damaged frame. His hands moved with precision, but his mind was sharp with fear. He knew the hunter was coming, and it would bring destruction with it. Zira stood watch nearby, her spear glowing faintly blue in the moonlight. She didn't take her eyes off the jungle, not even for a moment. The chief approached, his long shadow stretching across the floor. He clicked in his own language, and Zira translated, "They will fight beside us. But they fear your signal will bring death." Ethan looked up from his work. "The signal will bring rescue." Zira's eyes narrowed slightly. "Or it will bring the hunter faster." Ethan gave a small shrug. "Then we kill it faster, far away." A deep, rolling roar echoed through the jungle. It was followed by the sound of trees snapping like twigs. The warriors rose to their feet. Gripping their weapons, the chief barked orders, and torches were lit along the ruined walls. The flames sent flickering light into the night, but it did little to chase away the dread. Ethan connected the final wire, the beacon's light flickering to life. A low hum filled the air, sending a shiver up his spine. He stood, glancing at Zira. "Once this is active, it can't be moved." "Then we defend this place until the end," she replied, her voice steady. The first sign of the hunter's arrival wasn't its roar, it was the silence. The jungle noises stopped, the wind seemed to vanish, and the air grew heavy. Then came the faint vibration in the ground, growing stronger with each passing second. The warriors tightened their circle around the beacon. Zira stepped to the front, Ethan just behind her. From the tree line, the hunter emerged. Its massive body glistened in the moonlight, the stone-like skin marked with fresh scars. But this time, it was not alone. Two smaller beasts stalked at its sides. Their eyes glowed the same yellow as the hunters. They spread out, encircling the ruins, cutting off any escape. The chief let out a sharp cry, and the warriors charged. Spears flew through the air, some striking true, others bouncing harmlessly off the beasts' hides. One of the smaller creatures leapt over the wall, landing inside the ruins with a crash. Ethan grabbed a long metal rod from the ground and swung it hard. The blow made the creature stumble, but it recovered quickly, snapping its jaws at him. Zira appeared from the side, driving her spear deep into its shoulder. The beast screamed, thrashing violently before retreating back over the wall. The larger hunter attacked the main gate. Each slam of its massive claws shook the stones loose. Cracks spread along the ancient walls, dust raining down from above. Ethan ran to one of the corners where he had set a trap, a bundle of scavenged explosives wired together from the tribe's supplies. He waited until the hunter pushed its head through the gap in the wall. Then he slammed the trigger. The explosion lit up the night, sending shards of rock and metal flying. The hunter roared in pain, pulling back, its face scorched and smoking. But it wasn't dead. Its anger only grew. It circled the ruins, striking from different angles. The two smaller beasts attacked again, leaping over the walls to tear into the warriors. The battle turned into chaos, shouts, roars, and the clash of weapons filled the air. Zira fought like a whirlwind, her spear striking with deadly precision. Ethan kept moving, using his engineering skills to improvise weapons on the spot. At one point, he tore a glowing crystal from the wall and wired it into a makeshift energy bomb. He threw it at one of the smaller beasts, the blast sending it tumbling into the trees. The red moon climbed higher in the sky, casting its strange light over the battlefield. The ground was slick with blood, both alien and human. The chief called for the warriors to regroup near the beacon. The hunter seemed to realize the importance of the strange machine. It lowered its head and charged directly for it. Ethan's eyes widened. "Zira! It's going for the beacon." She sprinted toward it, leaping onto the creature's back as it crashed through the defenders. Her spear drove deep into the base of its neck, but the hunter kept moving. Ethan ran to the beacon, planting himself in its path. He knew he couldn't stop it, but maybe he could slow it down at the last moment. The chief and two warriors slammed their spears into the beast's legs. It stumbled, and Zira's spear found its mark again, this time piercing deep into its throat. The hunter roared one final time before collapsing to the ground, shaking. The ruins, the smaller beast still standing, let out a shriek and fled into the jungle. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of fire and the heavy breathing of the survivors. Ethan looked at the beacon. It was still active, its steady hum filling the night. Zira stepped beside him, her golden eyes catching the light of the flames. "For now." "We live," she said. Ethan nodded slowly. "For now." But deep in the jungle, far beyond their sight, another roar answered the night. The jungle beyond the ruins stayed dark and silent. The red and white moons hung in the sky like watchful eyes. The survivors stood in the broken courtyard, their faces lit by dying flames. Ethan could still hear the distant roar, echoing in his bones. It wasn't over. The hunter was dead. But something else was coming, something bigger. Zyra stood near the main gate, her spear leaning against her shoulder. She was bleeding from a cut across her arm, but her stance was strong. Ethan walked up beside her, his hands black with dirt. "And blood, that roar." "It didn't sound like the same one," he said. Her golden eyes turned toward the jungle. "It wasn't." "This is the mate," the chief approached. Clicking low and slow, Zyra translated. "The mate will not stop. It will come with others." "The young." Ethan felt a cold weight in his stomach. "Then we don't have time." He looked toward the beacon, its steady hum filling the air. "If rescue is coming, they better hurry," he muttered. Zyra didn't answer, her gaze still locked on the black tree line. The tribe worked quickly through the night. The wounded were moved to the safest corner of the ruins. Ethan gathered every usable piece of tech and salvage. The chief ordered warriors to fortify the entrances with stone and sharpened wood. The smell of smoke and blood mixed in the air. Every sound in the jungle felt too close. Too sharp. Just before dawn, the first sign of the new danger came. A low, rhythmic thump footsteps, heavy and slow. The sound grew louder, joined by smaller, quicker ones. Ethan climbed the wall and looked out. Shapes moved in the mist, large and small. Dozens of glowing yellow eyes appeared one by one. Zyra's voice was cold. "They are here." The mate stepped into view, and Ethan's breath caught. It was larger than the first hunter, its body covered in thick, black plates. Scars ran down its flanks, and its jaws were even wider. Around it prowled 4 smaller beasts, their heads low, their teeth bared. The ground seemed to sink under their weight. The warriors tightened their grips on their spears. The air felt like it was holding its breath. Ethan turned to Zyra. "We can't just fight them head on. We'll be crushed." "I know," she said, her voice steady. "So we fight them our way." Ethan's eyes narrowed. The cliff. Her head tilted slightly. "The one beyond the jungle path?" He nodded. "If we lure them there, I can set the charges from the ruined storage. It might be enough to bring the whole thing down on them." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "A hunt. On our terms." The plan was risky, but there was no other choice. Ethan quickly rigged the last of the explosives with scavenged batteries. He strapped them into a crude satchel, the wires exposed. Zyra took the fastest warriors, moving out. Through a side path, their task was to draw the beasts toward the cliff. Ethan and a small group stayed behind to carry the explosives and set the trap. The jungle chase began before the sun cleared the horizon. Zyra and the warriors ran between the towering trees, their footsteps light. Behind them, the beasts thundered forward, snapping at their heels. The mate's roar shook leaves loose from the branches. Every step they took was a gamble, one mistake, and they would be caught. At the cliff's edge, the ground dropped away into a deep canyon filled with mist. Ethan crouched behind a boulder, working quickly to plant the charges along the narrow ledge. Sweat dripped into his eyes, his hands trembling as he twisted the wires together. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. He could hear Zyra's voice, shouting in her language. A heartbeat later, she burst into the clearing. The mate right behind her. "Ethan. Now." She called. He grabbed the trigger, his thumb hovering over it. But the mate didn't rush forward. It slowed. Eyes locked on him. It was studying him. Then it let out a deep rumble, and the smaller beasts fanned out. They were trying to flank him. Ethan's pulse spiked. He slammed the first trigger. detonating the charges along one side. The blast sent chunks of rock flying, cutting off the smaller beast's path. The mate roared, charging straight toward him now. Zira leapt aside at the last second, rolling to her feet. "Ethan! The last one!" she shouted. The mate's massive body shook the ground as it closed the distance. Ethan's finger pressed the second trigger. The ledge beneath the beast cracked, the stone groaning. For a moment, it seemed like nothing would happen. Then, the entire cliffside gave way. The mate let out a furious, echoing roar as it tumbled into the canyon. The sound faded into the mist below, followed by silence. The surviving smaller beasts froze, their glowing eyes darting between Zira and Ethan. Then, one by one, they turned and disappeared into the jungle. The fight was over, at least for now. Ethan leaned against a boulder, breathing hard. Zira stood beside him, her golden eyes meeting his. "You have the mind of a hunter," she said. He managed a tired grin. "And you have the heart of an engineer." They began the slow walk back to the ruins. The jungle felt different now, still dangerous, but no longer pressing in on them. When they arrived, the beacon still hummed, sending its signal into the void. The tribe welcomed them with sharp cries of victory. But even in the celebration, Ethan knew the truth. This planet was not safe. Not for them, not for anyone. As the sun climbed higher, a sound cut through the morning air. It wasn't a roar. It wasn't the jungle. It was something mechanical. Ethan's head snapped up, his heart leaping. A faint shape moved in the sky, growing larger by the second. Zira stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "Is it rescue, or something worse?" she asked. The shape in the sky grew larger, cutting through the pale light of morning. Its shadow stretched over the jungle, passing across the ruins like a dark omen. Ethan stood frozen, his hands clenched at his sides. Zira's golden eyes tracked the movement, her spear lowering slightly but never relaxing. The sound was mechanical, a deep, steady hum mixed with the faint whir of engines. The tribe gathered in the open courtyard, their blue eyes fixed on the sky. Some whispered to each other in their clicking language. Others gripped weapons. They didn't know if the thing above was friend or foe. Neither did Ethan. As the craft came closer, its shape became clear, a rescue ship. The silver hull glinted in the light, but it bore scorch marks and unfamiliar markings. It was human design, but there were signs of alien modifications. Ethan's stomach tightened. "Not standard fleet issue," he murmured. Zira tilted her head. "Then who comes for you, human?" The ship hovered above the ruins, stirring dust and leaves in a swirling storm. A deep thud echoed as landing struts met the ground outside the broken walls. The ramp lowered slowly, releasing a hiss of pressurized air. Ethan squinted into the prequel mist that poured from the opening. Shadows moved inside, armored shapes. For a moment, he felt relief, but then he saw the weapons, raised and ready. 3 figures stepped out first, clad in dark combat armor. The helmets were sleek, their visors glowing faintly blue. Behind them came another, a tall human man with sharp features and a cold smile. "Ethan Cole," he called, his voice carrying easily. "You're a hard man to find." Ethan's heart sank. He knew that voice. It was Commander Varric, a corporate enforcer from the same company that had abandoned their transport ship in the first place. "You're supposed to be dead," Ethan said flatly. Varric's smile didn't fade. "And yet, here I am." His gaze shifted to the beacon, its steady hum filling the air. "That signal of yours is worth more than you realize," he said. Ethan took a slow step forward. "We called for rescue, not thieves," Varric chuckled. "Rescue? Oh, you misunderstand. I came for the tech, not for you." The warriors of the tribe tightened their circle, their spears ready. Zira moved to stand in front of Ethan, her voice low. "They are not here to save us. They will kill anyone in their way." Ethan's mind raced. The beacon was still broadcasting. If they lost it, their only chance of real rescue would be gone. Varric gestured, and his soldiers moved forward. One aimed a weapon at the beacon. Ethan's voice snapped out. Don't touch it." The commander smirked. "Why? Afraid your pet monster will come back?" As if summoned by the words, a deep rumble rolled through the jungle. The ground shook under their feet. The tribe shifted nervously. Zira's grip tightened on her spear. "That is not an earthquake." From the tree line, two smaller beasts emerged, their yellow eyes glowing. They were the young ones that had escaped. Behind them came something worse, another massive hunter, bigger than both before. Its scars told stories of battles survived, and its roar shook the air like thunder. The humans, the tribe, and the predators stood locked in a moment of terrible silence. Then everything exploded into chaos. The beasts charged, scattering soldiers and warriors alike. Gunfire cracked, spears flew. The roar of the hunter drowned out all else. Varric's men fought with precision, but they were unprepared for creatures this fast. One soldier was dragged screaming into the trees. Another was thrown against the ruins wall, his armor shattering. Ethan grabbed Zira's arm, pulling her toward the beacon. "If we hold them off long enough, the fleet might still get the signal." He shouted. She nodded, spinning to slash her spear across the leg of one of the smaller beasts. The creature screamed, stumbling. Ethan yanked a fuel cell from the beacon's pack and slammed it into a makeshift charge. The blast sent a wave of heat across the courtyard, buying them a few seconds. Varric shouted angrily, "You're destroying the prize." Ethan's glare was sharp. "It's not a prize, it's survival." The massive hunter lunged toward the beacon. Ethan and Zira moved together, striking from both sides. Their blows slowed it, but the beast's strength was overwhelming. It smashed into the beacon, bending its frame. Sparks flew. The hum faltered, then steadied again. It was still working, but barely. The fight raged on until the sky above filled with a new sound, louder, deeper than before. Everyone froze for a heartbeat. Through the clouds, a massive cruiser descended, its hull marked with the symbols of the United Earth Fleet. Its floodlights swept across the ruins, the jungle, and the chaos below. A voice boomed from the speakers. "This is Captain Alice Wren of the UEF. Stand down immediately." Varric's face twisted with frustration. The soldiers hesitated, lowering their weapons. The beasts snarled but backed away slowly, fading into the jungle shadows. The cruiser's side doors opened, dropping rescue pods into the courtyard. Medical teams rushed forward, guiding survivors inside. Ethan looked at Zira. "We made it." She gave a faint smile. "We hunted, and we lived." As they stepped toward the rescue craft, Ethan glanced back at the jungle. Two yellow eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, unblinking. The hunter was still out there, watching, waiting, and deep down, Ethan knew this was not the last time their paths would cross.